am your host. Welcome, my friends. High-level trade talks between Canada and the United States have resumed in Washington following more bad economic news for Canada's auto sector. Stellantis says it is moving production of the Jeep Compass out of Brampton, Ontario to Illinois. 3,000 Canadian jobs are being affected. It's part of the company's $13 billion plan to boost production south of the border. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is in Kenora. He said it's time to hit back against that, quote, tyrant, Trump.
My number one job is make sure we protect the people of Ontario. I need to protect the communities against that tyrant south of the border, which drives me absolutely nuts. That guy, President Trump, he's a real piece of work. You know something? What my message to the Prime Minister when I meet him on Thursday is if you can't get a deal, let's start hitting him back. Let's start hitting the U.S. back hard.
Okay. Ford says he spoke with the president of Stellantis. He says the company did not live up to its agreement with the people of Brampton as far as keeping that plant open, but he still puts the blame at the feet of Donald Trump.
You know, it's disappointing. They said they're going to keep Brampton open. I had a conversation with the president of Stellantis yesterday. He said, well, we're going to postpone it for a year. We're going to find a new model. He's given me his word. They're going to keep it open. They're going to see what products they're going to put in there. But again, his words, not mine, but it's everyone in the world. He goes, there's uncertainty. Until we see a deal made between Canada and the U.S., the Kuzma deal, how do you figure any company can figure it out? It's the uncertainty that President Trump has not just brought to Canada, he's brought it to the entire world.
That plant in Brampton has been idle since 2023. At that time, the company said it was going to retool for the Jeep Compass. The provincial government vowed to chip in $132 million to help retool that plant for EV production. This post by Conservative MP Raquel Dancho. Shocking news from Stellantis today. The Liberals gave Stellantis up to $15 billion for EV battery production, but apparently failed to secure any guarantee to protect Stellantis' wider manufacturing footprint in Canada. Unfortunately, we're talking about EVs that consumers have shown little interest in buying. Only about 9% of new cars sold in Canada are EVs. The company's plans changed, of course, when President Trump announced a 25% tariff on imported automobiles. The Prime Minister was quick to blame the move on those tariffs, saying that Stellantis' decision is a direct consequence of the U.S. tariffs and possible future trade actions, quote, until a more certain trade environment for the North American auto sector is established through the upcoming review of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. Decisions on new investments in the auto sector will continue to be affected. The Carney government has so far failed to reach a trade deal with the Trump administration, despite his election promise, campaign-wise, to do so by July the 21st. Here he is weeks ago, assuring Canadians we already have the best deal with the Americans under the current USMCA.
We have the best deal of anyone in the world right now. We have the lowest tariff rate on average, a little over 5.5% versus that 16% average for the world, and in many cases much higher. We have that confirmed in an executive order of the president a few weeks ago. It's important that we preserve that. We happen to have the best deal with the Americans.
Okay. Hasn't worked out, has it? This post by Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Tough day for 3,000 Brampton Stellantis workers who just learned that Mark Carney sold them out and let their jobs move to the United States after promising to negotiate a win with President Trump and giving billions of dollars in handouts to the company. The elbows down Prime Minister got no job guarantees for auto workers, weak leader, broken promises, lost jobs. For its part, the company says it does have plans for the Brampton plant, but wants to talk to the federal government first. Does that mean they're looking for more tax dollars? We'll have to wait and see. This is my good friend Mario Zelaya from the GTA. Mario very quickly has become one of the most popular content producers online, generating millions of views to his very good videos. Mario, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
In your recent video, you were talking about the Stellantis situation, the moving out of thousands of jobs. It's terrible news for the workers in that city, terrible news for the country in general. Let's watch a little bit of the video now that Mario generated as a result of that announcement.
I just got this audio recording. I cannot show the video. I can only share the audio, so listen to this.
This is Plant Manager Alex Pittis. I'm calling today because I want to share some important news that involves our plant. Our CEO, Antonio Pelosa, just announced the largest single investment in our company's 100-year history, $13 billion over the next 4 years to grow our business in the U.S. What does this mean for Brampton Assembly? For now, this means that those on layoff will remain on layoff. We recognize the uncertainty this brings and will be working closely with Unifor to develop a plan that supports you through this transition. We will continue to share updates as soon as more information becomes available.
There you have it. Stellantis is moving production from Brampton to the U.S., $13 billion investment in the U.S.
Yeah, I thought that the way that announcement, that recorded announcement came out was particularly cruel because it starts off talking about this huge investment by the company, 13 billion or whatever it was. And then, 30 seconds later, you realize none of that investment is coming to Canada. Good for you for getting that recording, Mario. What do you make of this announcement in Brampton?
I think it's concerning on multiple fronts. One, concerning because Mark Carney clearly hasn't expedited and put the negotiations of these tariffs that we have with the U.S. at the forefront. If he prioritized that as the number one thing instead of flying around to different countries, who knows what could have happened? And now we're playing the what if game. And what if he actually prioritized it and dealt with that? Because remember, when he first replaced Justin Trudeau, and he was prime minister because he took over, he immediately flew over to the UK. He didn't go to see Donald Trump. He didn't start negotiating the tariffs. Like it's almost like as though he put it in the back burner. And not only that, like the way this has come down, it was an eventuality unless he started really prioritizing it. And so I think Canadians have a lot to be concerned about with their government that we still do not have a deal. How is it that the tariffs were announced later for the UK, later for all these other countries, and yet they reached some sort of an agreement, at least in principle? It might not be in writing, but in principle it was agreed to, and at least there's stability in capital investments. And this is what happens when companies are hesitant to deploy tens of billions of dollars. The main thing that these companies are going to do is just be like, you know what, we're not going to wait anymore. These tariffs right now aren't going away in Canada against Canada. We're just going to move production to the U.S. That's the single biggest investment Stellantis has done in their history, and it's going to America. And not only that, I mean, I would love, I might even spend some time this evening looking at all the subsidies and grants that were given, not only to Stellantis, but to Volkswagen and all these other EV companies. We were propping up what I'll say is a superficial industry. This was all government subsidized. And, we were building when I say we, these large corporations were building plants with, to create 2,000 new jobs, but it would have been cheaper giving each person $1 million than to have this go forward. So I think the whole thing has been just an epic disaster.
Yeah, and when you look at some of the previous, to your point, EV announcements, I mean, we're talking about up to $15 billion to Stellantis and another firm for this battery plant operation. And yet when it came time to expanding their auto plant that was retooling for EVs, well, they were looking at Michigan. So they're relegating $100 million to the retooling of a plant in Michigan to build EVs, the Jeep EVs. I mean, they could have easily done that in Canada, especially given this prior announcement of up to $15 billion for this EV plant for Stellantis. So a lot of people are feeling betrayed by the company, which came out recently and said, "Oh no, we've got plans for this plant, and as soon as we talk to the feds about it, we'll let you know what those plans are." Well, that tells me that they're looking for more government money. If you're saying we're not going to make an announcement until after we talk to your government, that tells me that they're going cap in hand for more tax dollars. What do you think?
Personally, if it were me, if there's any sort of breach of contract, I'm suing. I'm suing for every single tax dollar that was given at the federal level and at the provincial level. Um, there's no way. We are not a charity, and we are not a corporate charity for anyone. The fact that tens of billions of dollars were given to some of the biggest companies in the world is disgusting. Like, we are not here to prop up these billion-dollar industries. I think it was Goodyear that was given almost $500 million. We're talking about a company that is double digits in the billions of dollars of revenue. This is what the Liberal Party does. They prop up these industries, and all it takes is a swipe of a signature, a swipe of a pen. The signature's on, boom, that industry is destroyed. It's literally happening to our video production and our movie production industry as well. It's all been propped up by the government. And actually, I take it back. It's been propped up by me and you with our taxes, because there is no such thing as government dollars. There's only our dollars. And we pay for it not only for the money that gets given to these companies, but by inflation, which is by far the worst possible tax in existence. Because once that hits, you don't get that money back. It's not a one time, this is a one time hit to whatever your net worth is in that moment of time. I would much rather pay a higher tax rate than to have the inflation that we're having right now because of this uncontrolled spending. It's this unsatiable desire to just spend at the corporate level to companies that really don't need the money. And the amount of economic activity that is really being generated in the long run, I have no idea how they could possibly measure that ROI to say this is a great idea. All these things require in-depth economic studies, and I really question what those studies were that were done to justify the tens of billions of dollars for this industry, not factoring in or considering the risks that are associated with doing so. It makes no sense.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense at all, especially when you consider that roughly 9% of new vehicles sold in Canada are EVs. So consumers are already giving them, the thumbs down, despite this move to ban gas powered engines. The people just don't want them. And that's why these companies are losing millions on these EVs, despite the fact that we seem to be pushing headlong into the construction and the manufacturing of these EV products, these batteries. But I also want to say that you made a good point earlier about the lack of prioritizing by Carney. The fact that he, rather than going to the United States, which is kind of traditional, that's usually the first people you talk to after you become prime minister. You always had the sense that he was trying to push away Trump, that he didn't think much of him, that he thought he could do an end run around Trump, make deals with all these other countries. That none of that worked. And now we have this story here where high level trade talks between Canada and the United States have resumed in Washington. So there's all of a sudden this scramble, it seems, after this announcement. I'm sure it was planned before the announcement, but all of a sudden they're starting to get nervous. Like, maybe we better push, put the pedal to the metal and get a deal with Trump before things get much worse. Are you getting the sense that maybe there's some serious nervousness after being somewhat cocky at the start of his time in office? You know, Carney acting like he was the big man on campus. Now all of a sudden, we're in trouble. We better cut a deal with Trump, ASAP.
Here's the thing that I've learned about negotiations over time, and this is a course that I loved, and probably the best course I've ever taken in my university in my life ever. And I've read several books on it, and the tactic and the strategy of what the Liberals decided to do and what Carney decided to do by basically, let's ignore the bully, let's ignore him. It's a power play and it's a power move and it's strategically being done. But when you have, there's something called the BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Our BATNA is awful. We have no other BATNA. We need the United States because the majority of our GDP is exported to them. They are our number one customer. Now, on the flip side of it, the US, they don't need Canada, and they've signaled that. And not only do they not need Canada, we want to manufacture everything that Canada, in their eyes, took from us. We want to manufacture cars now. And by Carney employing this negotiation strategy of ignoring instead of meeting him head on and giving him the things he wanted, there's something that he said very early on, before he was officially put in office and replaced Biden, Donald Trump said he wants the Keystone XL. I don't know if many people remember this or not, but that's the key thing that he wants. If you look at the signals of the things that he's interested in, he wanted Greenland for what? For the rare earth minerals. And now here we are today talking about China saying that they're going to hold back those rare earth minerals, and Donald Trump saying we're going to implement the 100% tariff on China. You have to look at what the person wants. And if they want energy, and we have the third largest supply in the entire world, we feed it to him. We feed it to him endlessly. And we say, you know what? We will continue to give you the 20-30% market rate discount that you've been getting. That is our return to you on tariffs. Like this is the tariff. This is the fee that we're going to pay, and you're going to get the discount, and we're going to enrich ourselves as a result of it. Canadians will become wealthier. We will lower taxes. We have, GDP growth. We will have so much growth because we are an energy superpower that has been artificially deflated by the Liberal government. And so, if you look at what is available to you, Mark Carney, and I said this back in, I think it was April, I said he's going to have a choice to make. He's going to either have to abandon his net zero insanity, his insane view of this, and it's going to make the economy suffer, and he's going to lose his role as a prime minister, or he's going to build the Keystone XL pipeline and give Donald Trump what he needs. And Trump has him where he wants him. He was not the person to best negotiate with Donald Trump. And in fact, he literally told us when he failed officially, we have the best deal in the world. That is the single most insulting thing that I think I've ever heard any prime minister shamelessly say and do. When they tell us we're going to be elbows up, we're going to negotiate against them, I'm going to get you the best rate, and then for him to turn around and say we have the best deal in the world, that should be a massive slap in the face of every single Canadian that voted for him and even voted against him. It is the most shameless thing any sort of prime minister can do. It is the ultimate form of gaslighting. And to me, as the moment he said that, I realized this guy is no different than Justin Trudeau. In fact, he's worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was Biden, I guess, who canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. The first day he was in office, he came in and that was it. And, it's been a disaster, really. So Trump's trying to get that back online. But the other thing that Carney said that stands out for me right now, in light of everything that's happened with Stellantis, is that Canadians are going to be investing, have already invested $500 billion over the last 5 years in the United States. So he's bragging about the fact that Canadian investors, rather than investing in Canada, are moving their money to the United States, as if that's a good thing. And he wants to do a lot more. So in light of that, to look at Stellantis's move now to move its operation south of the border, it's another slap in the face, at least for taxpayers. What do you think they do now? I mean, where does Carney go from here? I mean, he promised that there would be a negotiated deal, a victory, a negotiated win over Trump this was supposed to happen back in July 21st. Here we are in the middle of October, still no deal. He's got his A team down there scrambling to get a deal. And Trump seems to be in no hurry at all, does he? I mean, at this point, he's cutting deals with a lot of other countries, including the 27 members of the EU and the UK and Japan, huge players, huge trade players. He's cutting all these other deals, and Canada still left, on the sideline. What does he do
And
now, do you think?
and as of this morning, I believe he just raised the tariffs on softwood lumber to
Ugh.
45%. So our tariffs, since Mark Carney has been in office, has actually gone up. And Mark Carney turns around and tells us we have the best deal in the world. He's being put into a corner now where he has no choice, and they're going to have to get a deal done soon because it's slowly starting to chip away at us. If you look at what he did with Danielle Smith, he just ignored her. It was the same thing. Danielle Smith was asking, like, release the energy, stop blocking oil, gas, like, let's really start unleashing what we have here in Alberta. And he just ignored her as well. This is a consistent strategy of what someone does when they don't want to face and tackle the problem head on. I think and I talk to, a lot of, business associate friends and family. A lot of the things that make people very successful is being able to have very uncomfortable and awkward conversations and look at the other person in the eye. This government has not done that. In fact, they've ignored the bully, waited for, maybe tensions to lower instead of them proactively lowering those tensions and actually working towards a solution. You can't ignore the monster that's underneath the bed. The monster's there, and you have to tackle it head on, and you have to figure out a way to actually deal with it. And the way we deal with it is literally energy. That is the one card that we have that we ultimately have to play. He's going to have no choice. He really is going to
Yeah.
have no choice, because our automotive sector and our automotive industry and our film industry, which employs, I think the arts and media is over 175,000 people plus in Canada. That's been decimated in Ontario and BC. Ontario is going to experience some pretty big job losses, not just from the auto sector, but also from the media and arts sector as well. And this is a massive problem. And again, it's just been ignored away. So he's going to have to tackle it, because the one thing that I've realized that the Liberal Party cares more about is polling and staying in power. And so if the polling goes bad, if people are starting to reach out and they're really starting to get ticked, like, hey, you're literally not doing anything. I supported you in the election. You told me you were going to do this. And all of a sudden, public service jobs are being cut. These people are being laid off. Stellantis is moving overseas. We're losing our corporations. It starts snowballing. They care more about power.
Oh, absolutely. It's all they care about. And of course, they've got a budget to table a few weeks from now that's potentially going to have a deficit of 65, anywhere from 65 to $100 billion, depending on who you talk to. But
Mhm.
there is one other story that I want to ask you about. Um, the gun buyback. I understand that you got a tip from somewhere inside the Liberal government that suggests that the buyback program might be scuttled. Is that right?
Yes, and so I literally just made the video this morning. I got a text message about it, and apparently the analysts, and I have to say apparently because this is directly from an extremely reliable source, is what I will say. And they told me that an analyst, liberal analyst, who is actually working on the gun buyback program, all the analysts have received an email, and that email basically said that this program is ultimately going to be shut down. And it completely makes sense because it was an indefensible program in the first place. And again, I really do believe that the momentum has shifted against them, and people started talking and speaking up and saying, why are you spending a billion of our dollars taking firearms from people who aren't committing crimes, from law abiding citizens who literally have their license, when nearly 90%, and this is a direct number from the Toronto Police Association, I believe it was in 2024, they said 88%, to be exact, of the firearms confiscated in crimes came from the US. They're not even coming from Canada. And a lot of these are guns that are, prohibited. You're not even allowed to have a handgun. I can't walk around with one. I can't even transport one to the firing range. I think unless I'm a sports shooter, I think might be the exception. But there's such crazy restrictions, but this is what's on the street, and it's coming from America. So why on earth would you take this away from law-abiding citizens? Why would you take it away from Canadians who are literally obeying the law, when criminals are the ones that don't care for this? And to spend $1 billion in doing so, and have the OPP come out and say, we're not participating in this charade, we got real work to do. Like, that is a massive blow, because if the provincial police won't get involved, and they're not going to be knocking on people's doors and saying, hey, you have this firearm, you're supposed to give it in, we're going to charge you, and we're going to arrest you and take it away from you. They don't have time for that. No one has the resources for that. And so I think there's going to be such a strong pushback that the amount of charges that they will lay across Canada, I think, will be massive, and it will literally put an end to the Liberal Party. I think this would be a disastrous program for them. It absolutely makes zero sense. So when I heard this, it completely makes sense, because once you look at the numbers, they ran their test program in Cape Breton, which is a liberal friendly area. I have a feeling they didn't hit the numbers that they thought they were going to do. And this was a small sample size. And they realized, like, holy crap, like there's, let's say, X amount of people that have these prohibited firearms. If we only have less than 2 or 3% of these people submit, this is going to be an embarrassment. That means we're going to have to charge, 80, 90% of people. They have the numbers. They have the numbers, and I can almost promise you it's not looking good, and they probably won't release it. They're just going to say, well, you know what, we're going to trim it back, which I think is a great thing. And it never should have been done in the first place, especially the way Gary tried to defend it, our safety minister. The whole thing's a joke.
Man, it would be something if they were to walk away from that. And I don't think there's a face-saving way for them to do it.
Yeah.
After all the tens of millions of dollars they've spent on this program, these guys are obsessed with censorship and grabbing guns. It's just so typical of leftists. Mario, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's just been a total pleasure chatting with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Mario Zelaya. And that is it for this edition of Straight Up. Appreciate you tuning in, my friends. Let's do it again real soon, shall we? Bye-bye for now.